Ron Meredith with us too. I guess it was all three of them.
Riviera Maya,
What's the time?
Tulum area, Quito Roo is the state, but Cancun, just south of Cancun.
Sure. I was thinking there's one on the other side, on the Pacific side, where Los Hadas is. Remember the movie 10?
Yeah.
It was filmed there.
Really? With Bo Derek? Yep. Yeah, where she's running on the beach. That was the iconic beach.
And the sand was very hot. Remember?
Did you run down that beach today?
Did you get a video of the wind blowing your hair?
There's lots of things jiggling on me too.
Jay has his Baywatch moment.
We had a big time. I tell you, that people were really, really good down there. They were really good to us. So you can tell they're very service oriented. It was great. Of course, it helped us just me and Molly.
There you go. It's kind of like anytime work.
Well,
that's not a-
go.
Yep.
That's not an apple, though.
No.
After the first
I
every one.
thought I saw an apple.
Right. No. No. Not allowed. Not allowed yet.
Okay.
Everybody, Josh kind of tells everybody.
It don't matter.
He tells everybody and he said, nobody.
That's us.
Oh, it's there again.
You've always said that. You don't listen very well.
My blender going.
That's how I'm 10 a.m. on vacation.
No, I'm talking about at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well,
He's actually getting a little more mobile, you know, because he's there for a long time.
and I'm being serious when I say that.
His name right now is he had a knee replacement a year ago.
That's right.
His ankle was all crushed and turned,
Well,
was all messed up.
It's 6 o'clock, and I guess
December.
I'm the secretary. I guess I'm
Weight bearing
the only officer here tonight. I guess I'll bring this thing in order.
and they had to go back down to bed. Works for me.
We'll wait for our
Clean
co-counsel
council had put a one
to
back
conferencing with each other.
for a while with home health coming, so it set it back. But I think he's, you know, he's
Y'all ready?
a lot better than he was.
Everybody ready? So we'll call this meeting to order. Secretary of the board, being the only officer here, we'll call it to order. June 25th, 2019, Glasgow Electric Paint Board meeting. I guess the first order on the agenda is the election of officers. So I move that we begin the selection process, the nomination process for the election of officers for the board, considering that we have the chairman is in absentia currently. So I'll open the floor to nominations for officers.
I nominate Tag Taylor,
Knew you were gonna-
chairman.
I'll say that.
It's a shock.
Shocking, huh?
I'll second. I was, yeah. Yeah.
Any other?
We need to have a slate that includes the secretary treasurer.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have secretary treasurer too. So Libby, I guess you're going to be the longest serving remaining member, considering Jeff's term potentially expires without reappointment in about 6 months. So I'll nominate Libby.
And I'll second that.
So now we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of Tag Taylor becoming the chairman and Libby Short being the secretary/treasurer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
It was a tough campaign.
It was all in 4 minutes. Okay, so we need to review the agenda, any approval of, or any agenda items, anything anybody member want to bring up before we move on with the regularly scheduled agenda? Now it's time to bring anything up that we want to consider for the agenda. Any additions? None. We'll move on to number 3, which is the replacement of Robert's rules. I need a motion to begin discussion on the replacement of Robert's rules.
I make a motion. We may start the discussion on Robert's rules.
I'll second.
And what I submitted to you guys, Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I?
Absolutely.
I said it was also in your board package, but Jeff found this document that I had not come across. It is, as it's titled, The Basics of Parliamentary Procedure, and it pretty much represents the way this board operated for 50-plus years before. The only thing is, we never had it in writing. We just used conventional parliamentary procedure, but not according to any written schedule. So I thought this was worthwhile for you all to start looking at. I assume you will want to customize it to be the Glasgow Electric Plant Board parliamentary procedure, but this is the starting document that Jeff provided to me. You guys can, however you want to approach it, pencil in changes that you'd like to make and get them all to me, and I'll reduce it to a consolidated document that you all can finally act on whenever you're happy with it.
Let me suggest, Billy, that you first have a motion to repeal or rescind Robert's Rules of Order and get that out of the way. Then the board can study this document and massage it in any fashion you want to and adopt it perhaps at your pleasure at the next meeting or whatnot. But you can continue, with Robert's Rules of Order out of the way, you can continue as you have done in the past that Billy mentioned, which is pretty much in line with this. I found it didn't take a lot of digging to find this document here. And I think it's a common sense document. I think it makes reference to that in there. It also, let me point out one thing that you've had to deal with in the past. It does say that a motion can address only one subject, and I think I mentioned that previously and was challenged by someone. I think I should also point out, that the Glasgow City Ordinance, Code of Ordinances, has a provision that says an ordinance shall address only one subject. So the very creating body of this body has that provision governing it, and they don't have Robert's Rules of Order, by the way. So
just to be clear, parliamentary procedure is made up of, more than one set of rules. I mean, there are different sets of rules for parliamentary procedure, of which Robert's Rules is one of those.
One of those
Types of rules.
Masons, as a matter of fact, most state legislative bodies in the country operate under a set of rules called Mason's rules, not Robert's. But it doesn't really matter. The rules of parliamentary procedure are generic. They're simply, and you can adopt any rules you want to govern the way you handle your meetings.
These rules as written, are these as far as chairman making motion or seconding the motion, how?
My suggestion is to first repeal Robert's Rules.
Right.
Okay.
And
then we vote to put a new set of rules in place.
well, then you, down the road, after you have looked this over and put it in the form that's suitable to you for, to become a policy of this board.
Okay.
And one of the things that you might consider is what you just brought.
Right.
If that's not in here, and I don't think it is, then you all might want to, when you create a customized version, you decide whether you want the chairman to be.
That is what we have always operated under. The chairman invites and encourages open discussion, asks for a motion, and
But doesn't make it.
but doesn't make it.
Yeah, the statute says you establish your procedure, so you vote by majority, so you can establish, I guess, whatever procedure you want. And it'd be good, Jeff's outline certainly would be a good thing.
Since we've already adopted Robert's rules, and now we're gonna repeal Robert's rules, that's a change in rules, which does require the 2/3 threshold, I believe, at this point, doesn't it?
No, as a matter of fact, the statute, the little TVA Act says that that a majority vote is what is required on all the issues. Didn't want to get into that fight before, but having a 2/3 majority, requiring a 2/3 majority would run afoul of the little TVA Act.
Okay.
So we have a motion to discuss. Do we need a motion actually to
We
repeal?
do. We're gonna need a, so I'll entertain a motion to repeal Robert's Rules of Order, and then, that's
Well,
it.
first we need a motion to
Right, we'll
repeal
just have the
Robert's
one.
rules as adopted in the previous meeting, and I'll make that motion.
I will second that motion.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor of repealing Robert's Rules of Order, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We have a repealed Robert's Rules of Order.
And then on this adopting or customizing this document, if you all could just get either write on paper copies of what you'd like to see added and drop them by, or email me, however you want to deliver it. But I will just incorporate your all's suggestions into this document, and then, as Jeff said, at your pleasure, whenever you're happy with it, you can decide whether to adopt it.
On number 4. Review and approve minutes of the May 28, 2019 meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Got a motion? Have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Consideration of biannual write-offs.
Okay.
Is that on the agenda?
What we have been doing for years, at the recommendation of our auditor, is to biannually put before you all the accounts that we think need to be written off. They're usually at least 6 months to a year old before we have in effect given up on and need to move them over to the written off accounts. That does not mean that we're giving up trying to collect that amount. It's just an accounting entry to move it from a hot account to a written off account. The document that you've got, and I can call it up here, is for the half of a year, and it includes 300 accounts totaling about $60,000. Now, I thought this was an interesting opportunity to talk a little bit about our policies, because in the last couple of weeks we've been roundly criticized yet again on social media for just being too aggressive in trying to collect past due accounts. Well, that is completely at the board's purview, but I'm operating on the system that we've used for years, and normally at the end of this item of business, twice a year, the motion will be something like, I move that we write off these accounts, but instruct the superintendent to continue to pursue these. Why? Because this $60,000 for half a year, so $120,000 for a full year, that's part of our fixed costs. So when you talk about this whole rate matter of why is the customer charge going up and what can you do to keep our fixed costs down, well, If we can get people to pay their bill, that has a direct impact on our fixed costs. This $120,000 a year goes directly into the customer charge. So everybody that is paying their bill, and those that aren't, have a direct connection to this bad debt situation. Part of your customer charge that you pay at a residence or small business or whatever is to fund this for people who choose not to take our products and just walk away and not pay for them. So,
Does most of that fall in the residential and small business category?
most of it falls into residential, you're right, and then the next would be small business, and of course it depends on bankruptcies. We've had some years like when Dana filed Chapter 13, I mean, that kind of dominated the whole year because of that. But you all spent much time looking at this, but you know, it is really shocking how many people, and remember, this is just for half a year, and it's very regular, so you know, this is not a surprise number. This is the kind of thing you're going to see again in December, and next June. You know, it's a very common thing. And why some of these numbers, I've picked out a couple that I've highlighted. Here's one. I guess I highlighted that one just because it's an unusual name. But this is just a residential customer. And this is somebody that when they presented themselves the last time in the lobby to set up an account, we determined that they already owed us for the last time they were in town. Now, if we were hyper aggressive, which we can be, this is what the board's here for, but the instructions that we're going on now are that when we identify, hey, we know you, Mr. Dances on Clouds, you owe us from the last time that you were here, and you owe us X number of dollars, say whatever it is, $500. We don't ask that $500 to be paid all up front before they can have service. We allow them to make what we call an arrangement to pay. You owe us $500, we're going to collect whatever, $25 a month for however long that it is to try to make it viable for the person, yet answer your all's directions to me to try to collect the past due amount. But often it results in a deal like this, where this person got set up, new account, stayed there 4 months or however long it was, and made a little bit of payment on the old amount, but wound up racking up another huge bill. So now instead of them owing us $500, they owe us $827. By the time you throw in the cable and internet stuff, and they often leave for some reason. People often leave with set-top boxes that are expensive and they're worthless on any other system. They cannot be used anywhere else. So that's how just a regular residential account in an apartment winds up with a $1,200 bill. And that's with the moderately aggressive efforts that we make, directed by the board, to try to recover the money. And the people that are being recovered from see it as being strong-armed. All the other 15,000 people in town see it as good. You're trying to cut down on my customer charge. So that's the sometimes untenable position that we find ourselves in. Trying to do what you all expect, trying to make sure that people on Facebook are happy. And us in the middle trying to operate this business in a fiscally sound method. Then we've got some other deals. There's usually 1 or 2 of these on every one of these reports that you see. If I can find it again. Okay, this is an interesting one. My Visual Package, LLC. Now this happens regularly. Some new business, in the case of this one, new business comes to town. All the elected officials are giddy. Look how successful we are about attracting, this outfit to town. The state is happy to give them, waive their property taxes, we make often. In fact, if you Google this one, you'll probably find quite a story, probably written by Melinda, on forgivable loans you give, all this kind of stuff. So everybody in the economic development world is, really high-fiving to get this place in. Then there's the electric plant board. We have to sit there and look at that new operation that everybody's happy about and say, yeah, what's that going to cost us? A business goes in an old building, but their operation plan is completely different than the last inhabitant of that building. So we don't really have anything good to guess at about how much their monthly bill is going to be. So we make a scientific guess about what their bill is going to be, and then we double it because, as you all can see, often before we cut somebody off and stop the bleeding, they've gotten at least 2 months out of us. So in this case right here, my visual package, so they came to town. The guess we made was only $1,000 deposit. They protested, screamed bloody murder over paying us $1,000 deposit. Sometimes makes us feel bad, but we know that we have to, we're duty bound to try to acquire some security to cover this loan we're making. Because when you give somebody electricity for 2 months, you're kind of like a bank. You're loaning people money, hoping they pay you back. In their case, they didn't pay it back. Even after we exhausted the $1,000 deposit, they still got close to $5,000 out of us. This is common. So, when you all hear or read about how mean we are and how money grubbing we are, don't automatically believe that stuff because what we're trying to do is mitigate these numbers that you guys are going to see every 6 months. Because if we don't collect it from them or try to reduce their bite on us, that the niceness, if you all instructed us to believe anything somebody says and just try to be nice to everybody, we can do that. That's what the board's here for. But expect this $60,000 loss to become a $150,000 loss. And expect me to come back and say to you, our customer charge has got to go up dramatically to pay for this. Because remember, we're a nonprofit corporation. There's nobody else to go to. There's not stockholders. There's no reserves for us to collect this from. It's got to come. It's a zero-sum game. So if these people don't pay it, then somebody else has to.
What are your collection procedures now once you get out, say over 90 days or 120 days? Do you try to collect internally or do you send them to a collection
I would
agency?
characterize it as mainly watching and waiting. We wait for them to come back, right?
We do, but we also, once these accounts are written off, then we send those to a collection agency.
Okay.
But not before they're written off. So it's often 6 months. It's way outside of 90 days before we do that. So the sum total is right at $60,000, 300 accounts.
And it's not really, I guess, prudent to, somebody else moves back in, even though they had a previous bill where they owed. You can't really tell them they can't have electricity, I guess, at this point, correct? I mean,
That's not what the board has instructed us to do, but you could.
Well,
That's the acid way to make sure they don't get anything more out of it.
right,
But
it
it's
doesn't help
not.
with collections, but it certainly doesn't allow for any more.
Right.
No, maybe, electricity is more of an essential item than cable and internet. So maybe that's how we help mitigate some of this, is we just don't allow the non-essential services to.
And we do that.
You do? Okay. So if somebody has a prior outstanding bill, they can get electricity, but they're not going to get cable internet until that prior bill is paid.
Correct.
Or their account is current, I guess, right? Okay.
I think Melanie would also point out that one of the most effective methods that we have was the offering of the iPay program, the pay in advance deal, where that we set the outstanding amount up on an automatic amount that gets deducted daily, And what is it? Since that program's a little over 3.5 years old, and it's collected
About $115,000.
$115,000 that we've gotten back through iPay. So that's been a very effective program for us.
What kind of feedback do you get from, I mean, you know, we know we need investment in industry in Glasgow. What kind of feedback do you get from anybody that is looking as far as the deposit?
Almost every time, especially if it's a project that has percolated up to where the local government is involved, they expect to not pay a deposit. And as soon as we ask for one, they like to call an elected official and put pressure on us, which they immediately do. And, you know, it's just...
So what happens? I mean,
We charge-
because when we don't,
We charge the
you know,
deposit and say...
we're not investor owned, so
Right.
it comes out of everybody
Yeah.
individually.
Right.
But as you can see, we charge the deposit, but we almost never get as much as we hope to get.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if the government's already involved anyway, then they're already getting some great incentives
Yeah.
to locate here.
Yeah.
So that would be an instance of them
If you believe in them,
Yeah.
When
just getting a little more.
when Dana had
Yeah.
that fabulous bankruptcy, I remember this discussion. That was in 2009.
I'd say it's about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I remember, you know, it was significant, but,
Well, we
you know,
had-
the story is, you know, when Eaton originally locates, you know, it's great, brass band, we need it, it's wonderful, but, you know, then times change and everybody looks at us as, why did you not have any security?
Well, you know, we're stuck with always having to be the realist in the middle of somebody else's exciting dream. And of course, we want these places to be successful, but we have to be realistic because we've actually, whereas a government official or a government body might decide just to waive their property taxes for X number of years or give them a forgivable loan, we've got stuff that we're going to have to pay to TVA that month, you know, when they are short. And it's not a nebulous concept for us. It's very realistic.
Well, we're betting every other customer's money on that. customer. That's really what we're doing.
That's
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're, just like you said, Jeff, if we were an investor-owned utility, the people sitting around this boardroom would be, you know, owners of this utility. It would be their money we're talking about here. But
Right.
this is not.
But this is
not
everybody in
board's money.
Glasgow. This is every stakeholder
customer
in Glasgow. It is their money.
We have, I think we're duty bound to make sure we protect those assets just as well as our own.
Right. And when somebody's standing in our lobby screaming at us, we have to try not to focus all of our attention on them. And remember, there's 14,500 other people out there. They're going to scream at us if we don't stand by our fiduciary duty to protect them.
Well, and part of the other part of my question was, you know, once again, as bad as we need investment, you know, we're really not charged with making that bet on behalf of our customers, but where does that fit into the equation?
Well, so it sounds like we're clawing back the deposits when we're able to. We are not allowing for non-essential services for customers that have previous outstanding balances. We are sending to a collection agency based, you know, on when we determine they are really become non-collectible to us. So the only other option at this point, the only other added, I guess, constraint we could put on this at the very beginning would be to, well, there's two really. We could increase the amount of deposits to include residential customers up to a certain point. And not allowing the essential services once they have an outstanding balance. I mean, that's really the only two options we have left, right?
Well,
I mean, are there other options?
I'm always afraid of making sweeping, all-inclusive statements, but that seems to be
That seems to be it, yeah. So really if we're going to shore this up and make it a little harder, you know, people to get by with leaving with outstanding balances, then it seems like we're going to have to do we're going to have to do a combination of two things or one of two things, but.
This had been getting better, though, with the iPad.
It has been getting better. As you can see, it's averaging a shade under 10,000 a month, which is what our objective has been. It used to be 13, 14, 20,000.
But the iPay,
Yeah.
you know, pays you
current prepay.
And it's not that many people are crazy about iPay, it's that our customer service team tells them, okay, this property has a history of averaging $300 a month, so your deposit is $600, and so well, I can't pay that, so, well, you can go on iPay, where you don't have to make any deposit at all. And so that's why that is such a growing product.
What is the, and refresh me on, what is the residential customer deposit?
Well, it's 2 months, it's not a fixed amount, it's 2 months bill.
Okay.
I mean, I guess we have a minimum of 100 or something like that.
We do a credit check on every
Yeah.
customer that wants to do a monthly bill, and it's dependent on that.
And I think it was close to 7, 8 months ago, we passed, I believe that came before the board, and we passed that criteria for determining whether or not someone's going to owe a deposit. So, and one of those was, prior payment history, and another one was the credit, your credit report.
Right.
So,
How about if anybody, okay, so in the Dances with Clouds instance, though somebody left us with a bill, came back and on monthly again and ended up leaving us with a bigger bill, if they already owe a previous bill, they have no option but to go on iPay.
That's up to you all.
no, that's,
I like that.
That's what I was kind of thinking about a minute ago, Libby, was to, if they, instead of taking away that essential service, put them on a prepaid plan. Yeah, that way you can't say.
And that way, and
Not allowed
with
to-
the
with an
agreement
adder.
that you can take so much towards your previous bill
Right,
as
there's a
well.
slight
Yes.
adder for- Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
You see anything unworkable about that, man?
Now, and the way it works now, with prepaid customers, if they have what we call that's debt recovery, we, of course, make them pay so much before we start the account. So say they owe us $600, we'll make them pay $200. We set the $400 up, and every time they make a payment on their account, half of it goes on the account, half of it goes to that debt until it's paid off.
Yeah.
So as far as having the other services, you're not any worse off because they're paying those on a daily basis.
Right.
And that's why we do encourage ones that have an old bill to go on debt recovery, because you do have a little more time, and we are collecting it continually instead of waiting once a month when we bill a part of it out.
So once we get, if you get so many days, which is usually 45 to 50 days out on a bill, that's about the time you're going to start getting, disconnection. When they do get disconnected, come back in, don't have the ability to pay for that bill currently, would you put them on the iPay at that point?
It is an option at that point.
What's the other option? Just leave it cut off?
Right.
Okay. So it seems like, if you're going to get your electricity put back on, that's really the only option to make that happen, or pay in full.
Right.
Okay.
What's your policy now on Mr. Jones coming in and getting service, runs up a bill, gets cut off? Later on, Ms. Jones comes in and applies for service at a different location. What do you?
Well, it's on the lease. Don't we get a copy of the lease?
The way we try to beat that is that we demand a copy of the lease so that we can identify that Ms. Jones is now the tenant at that property. Now, what's trickier is if we think Mr. Jones is still living there, and if we think we have good, solid evidence that he is, then we treat Ms. Jones the same as Mr. Jones.
Okay.
And there's case law on that. That was your opinion, that we have the right to keep someone from enjoying our services when they're acquiring them fraudulently, saying that they don't live there. And that's a fairly common, just about every day. It's, as Libby knows from being in the property management business, the people out front, it's a war zone out there, and the number of people that they deal with every day that are just bald-faced lying and trying to commit fraud makes it pretty easy to become jaded about people. But it's just part of again, this is not a Glasgow. Every utility is facing this same thing. You're selling a product that people get to enjoy for a month before you have really any financial conversation. That's a long time.
So I think Libby's kind of honed in here on what we have, at least for a period of time anyway.
It'll help some.
It'll help some.
It's not a magic bullet, but it's something.
Well, it's either that or being, callous and just never returning people to never letting them have electricity.
Right,
So
no, I think it's a
you are
great, I
saying
think it's a
that-
great compromise.
Are you directing us then to take the new position that anybody that has an outstanding balance can only get a prepay? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's one of three: pay it in full, cut them off.
Oh, well, yeah,
or,
yeah.
the prepay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's it. We have to have some recourse for
They just
Well, I
can't
think
do
that
monthly
makes sense.
billing.
That should be in the minutes.
Well, I mean, that's,
Yeah,
Well, there needs to be a motion.
cash,
That's what we're gonna
credit's
do.
not good as cash. That's not unusual, so.
So I'll entertain a motion to allow as a procedure for collection and as a matter of policy moving forward on collection of outstanding accounts that there's one of three options. You can either pay your bill in full, you can cease to receive service, or you can be put on the IP.
Second.
Well, I'm going to entertain it. I can't make it.
Oh, yeah.
He's asking for a motion.
Okay, well, I'll make that motion then.
Okay.
I will second that motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion
Okay, Mr.
passes.
Chairman, you still got to deal with these write-offs. then.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we write off and continue to collect.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Okay, here's something a little lighter. I think you probably all have heard about a partnership between the Glasgow Parks and Rec people and the Kiwanis Club, and there may be somebody else. But the overture made to me was from the Kiwanis Club. They are trying to have these movies in the park, and they've had their first one, and the screen that they, as you can see, is not real big, and it's a blow-up deal. And they're thinking that with the attendance that they had at the first one, that it's going to keep going up, and they're going to need a bigger screen. So they came to me and asked if we could set a couple of poles for a bigger screen. And I said, well, possibly. I said, first of all, and I try not to be an engineer all the time, but I said, it's going to be a lot more complicated than that. Somebody needs to design a screen, and if they use poles, we might, if the board is cool with it, we might donate a couple of poles and set the poles in the ground. But it's got to be more complicated because, as I have a bent to point out to people, the reason sailboats work is that the wind is a powerful force, and when you have a sail in place, it moves big things. And if you just put up two poles and try to put a sheet between them or whatever it would be, and leave it up there all the time, those poles are going down pretty quickly. And also, I don't know about the rules to softball and baseball, but I'm pretty sure you don't want any structure inside the fence. And to hold this up properly, if utility people were doing it, we put down guys on it, and you don't want those in the center field. So I've got this on the agenda just to find out from you all that if they pursue this, and if it looks like a real opportunity for us to get a feather in our cap by helping out, by doing something that makes sense, which a couple of poles and the labor to put them in the ground, are you cool with us doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a permanent structure would probably be, make a little more sense outside on the other side of the
With
fence.
some kind of system to
Right.
raise it up,
Right.
when they're
And you can put your guide wires on the backside of the fence. Nobody cares. Home run once it hits there.
How big is that?
I think that one that they rented, gosh, those are people right there, so it looks like it might have been 6 by 10 or something like that, 6 by 12, not very big.
If it can be done safely, I say we do it. I mean,
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think anytime we can do
I'm all
something
for
to
it.
use
They're just
our
gonna have to-
resources.
They're just going to have to do a different location
Be
so
sure
we
it's
can make
safe.
something permanent,
I don't
yeah.
know why they wouldn't put it down here at the other end of the park where there's no ball fields and it's just wide open spaces, but
Was there power on that end?
there is power down there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand what you're all, I don't know that it needs to be in the minutes. I just wanted to hear you all maybe they'll-
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely.
what you,
Anything we
we
can
just need to
do.
let Kiwanis figure it out, where
That's what I told him.
engineering, they'll let you decide whether or not it'll work.
I told him, I said, you get American engineers to donate engineering services and design something, and we'll see what we can do to do the construction part of it. But we're not gonna design it for you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving along. Okay, well, this is an interesting matter that's been around for a few years, but this time maybe we can dispense with it. So, this is a zoomed out portion of our grid with 31E out here and Haywood substation over here. In the 70s, we bought a transmission line from TVA that went all the way from out here on Temple Hill Road, all the way through out to nearly Railton. And that line is how Glasgow used to be fed before Haywood Substation was built. And then we used it for years to feed out of Haywood Substation and into town with an east and west leg. When we built East Glasgow Primary, we cannibalized a part of that line to give it to TVA as an incentive for them to build us a new $8 million feed into town, leaving this end of the line and this end of the line electrically useless, but it had a really nice right-of-way with it. And until Josh Francis came up with better ways for us to get geographically diverse internet feeds, I thought, well, someday we're going to need to go way to the east, maybe all the way to I-75, to get a geographically diverse internet circuit. And so I wanted to maintain that right away. But the way things have evolved, that seems less and less likely. I think we've got better ways to get diversity the way we're getting it right now than building all the way to I-75 would have been. So portions of that right-of-way on the east side of 31E go through farms, and portions of it go through subdivisions. And this portion of it goes through a subdivision called
Garnet Grove.
Garnet Grove. I forget every time I'm about to say that. And so you can see pretty much the whole subdivision plat here and how that transmission line just really, it was a bold move to develop that subdivision with this transmission line going right through the middle of it. But it's been developed for years, and kind of amazingly, a lot of people have bought lots, figured out a way to put houses on them without infringing on this 100-foot easement that we got from TVA. So the request that you're considering tonight is for this lot right here, which is still owned by a fellow named Roger Payne, who I believe was the developer of the subdivision. And that lot, he has never been able to figure out a way to put a house on without infringing on the right-of-way. So his request is, hey, would you get rid of that easement on this lot so I can do something with it? And I believe my recommendation to you tonight is that we ought to go ahead and do that for him. He's gone ahead and had Bobby Richardson prepare what's called a quitclaim deed, a document that you all got a copy of with your packet, that would specifically for that one lot declare that we don't have that easement anymore. So it's free and clear. Now, if you all decide to do this, you saw how many lots that those easements go across. I think you should expect other people to want the same kind of deal, and I don't see a problem with it. Except that each property owner that wanted it removed would need to go to their own attorney and get a quitclaim deed for their property. You might consider, if you want to do this, going ahead and authorizing me to do these things as they come up in the future, so you don't have to deal with it one lot at a time at the board meeting. But then that's up to you. If you want them to come one lot at a time, that's what they'll do.
Now, the quitclaim deed takes care of freeing up the property, but now also we got to pull an orphan transmission line on it too.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason we left the poles up there for a while was to maintain our claim to the easement.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with the quitclaim deed as long as the property owner is paying all the legal fees and we do not absorb any of the cost.
Yeah, I agree with that. That would be my recommendation. I mean, we had to buy the easement.
Yeah.
And we used it. We got the good out of it, and that's probably unnecessary. But I see no reason for us to also ask the other people in town to back the legal expense for
Right.
them to get something given to them. So that's what I need. If you all want to do this, I need your authorization to execute the quitclaim deed on behalf of the electric plant board, and then you all decide the matter about whether you want to give me carte blanche to execute any others that come along.
Well, you don't see any, I mean, I know you hate to look into the future with these blanket statements, but you don't see any of the other areas besides this particular plot. You don't see those being any different than what we're dealing with right here. I mean, we're not going to run into any other issues we don't think we're going to run into.
I just don't think we need that. Other than the section of that line which is now owned by TVA, I mean, we don't own that to give away.
Yeah.
But on the east side of TVA, on the west side of TVA, we just don't need it anymore.
Okay.
Is this going to be consistent with the request of the ambulance service?
I think that's for the board to decide. But it's a similar deal.
And is that easily in our base for payment in lieu of taxes?
I doubt if the easement is, the in lieu of taxes is based on plant, and the plant's depreciated, and it's about to be all removed, so. I don't think easements have any assessed value.
Any other discussion? Let's make a motion then, or I'll entertain a motion. Member of the board that we allow for a quitclaim deed for this particular property and any other quitclaim deeds related to this orphan transmission line to be handled by the superintendent and his staff.
So moved.
I'll second that. I just wanted added that we do not absorb any of the legal fees.
Okay.
I think that was part of,
Yeah.
should be part of your...
Yeah, let's amend that motion then.
And the motion, do I need to amend that?
Yeah, can you amend that, please?
So moved with the addition that at no additional legal expense to the EPB.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, second that.
Second that.
Yes.
All right. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Okay, this is kind of a housekeeping item. Every year, you're going to see the deal where several years ago, the Kentucky legislature had some bad experience with some nonprofits in the state. And they acted to force all nonprofits to file an annual budget, have an annual audit, a lot of stuff that we've already done, but we got caught up in the budget part. So the two items, I guess it's three motions that we really need to do this properly. And the first one is to amend the current year's budget. Now, this is what we projected last year. No, wait a minute. I guess the way Melanie's done it is, okay, most of these items are what we approved as the budget last year, and then this is the amendments to true it up to what really happened. And so it will end the fiscal year with a perfectly balanced budget because you amended it tonight. So the first one is amending the 2019 budget to reflect actual experience. I need a motion on that. And you'll see the main difference is that in the utility business, they ask you to predict what your income is going to be and your expenses, and our income and expenses are mainly consist of the power bill. And that depends on the weather. And, you know, we just can't look into the year and do a really great job of that.
Entertain a motion to approve the budget amendments for the 2019 year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign, motion passes.
Then the next move is to do the one looking forward for 2020. And it's the same exercise. We've done the best job here of estimating what our expenditures and income are going to be for next year, and that needs to be approved so we can send it to the, what is the name of the agency? SPGE State?
Special
State,
purpose
local.
government entity.
Okay.
Motion to accept and send to the SPGE.
Can you flip back?
Sure. It didn't look like it, but that's a flip.
No. That's good. Okay, flip back again for me. I'm trying to figure out the difference on 200,000 changing in assets from 19.
Which item?
Okay, well, we've got 1.9 over here, so it's really about 800,000 changing in assets.
Well, let's see, our interest expense is the same. See, this was a negative, and I don't exactly know. Total other income and deductions for last year was a negative, and then for next year, it's a positive, so.
Well, we took that bite off last year, didn't we?
I don't know if that's what Melanie's, she's the one that did it, so I'm.
Flip back one more.
Go back again.
Go back one more.
I hate it.
Forward, I'm sorry.
Oh, I guess it was the refinancing of the bonds, where that we, can you see it better back there?
Uh-huh.
So this is looking forward where it has a interest expense of $802,000, and then backward it had total other income and deductions of a negative, well, after we amended it, $173,000.
The biggest majority of it is there where you see the net results of
Yeah, merchandising, jobbing, and contract work.
That is where we put cable and internet.
Okay. It's about a $400,000 difference. looks
Yes.
like. Yeah, you got 515 over here and 140 over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did y'all approve the 2020 already?
We got a motion, looking for a second. Yeah.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the budget for 2020 and submitting to the state and local government?
Aye.
Motion, or I say aye. Motion carries.
Okay, the last thing is just reporting that we're required to do, just a simple cash flow statement. Projected ending cash balance of $4.8 million for 2020. And then also we're required to go over our schedule of long-term debt. This also appears in our audit, which you'll be seeing in October-ish. But our long-term debt anticipated at the end of 2020 is $16.5 million, and it's 18 now. And it, you know, we're gonna stay between 15 and $20 million probably for the foreseeable future. As we pay it down, we add it back every couple of years. And I believe that customarily we get a motion that you all have accepted this report or whatever.
I think it's to accept the report and authorize its transmittal
Okay.
to the appropriate governmental agency.
Motion to accept this report and authorize transmittal.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Okay, so this is stuff that I used to do at the top of the meeting, but after we, got the agenda working differently, it seems like it makes more sense here now. Monthly fuel cost adjustment for July the 1st will be 1.854 cents per kilowatt hour, which is a small increase. They're looking back to May. We had a hot May, and they had to buy a lot more power and a lot more fuel, so it puts upward pressure on the fuel cost adjustment. We did, let's see, instead of looking at the live one, I think, in May, we called 4 days, made 4 peak predictions, which is the maximum we are allowed under our present rate agreement. None of them caught the peak, though. Every time we called one, started raining or something happened where this peak was not eclipsed. So we have to call May a miss. That miss will cost us about $8,800. That's the delta between what we collected and what TVA charged us. This is an issue because the agreement that we made with that citizens group to limit our predictions to 4 days opens the door for misses, and misses cost money. So that's the situation. For May, we used all 4 days, but didn't hit the peak hour.
Where does that put us in our reserve?
Well,
for the year?
Such a great question, because
Anticipated my question.
the next slide is our year-to-date.
Uncanny.
Imagine me knowing that you were going to. So it puts us actually $11,000 behind, which we're halfway through the year. So that seems to be in line with all we want to do is break even on this. So we collected $40,000 in excess collections because we added a quarter to the cost of the KW to fund these misses, and our actual cost is $51,000. So we're $11,000 behind. June has been weird. Until today, we had not called a single day because June has just been undramatic as far as weather. So we called one today, but it didn't eclipse the former peak for the month. We're calling one tomorrow. We'll have 2 more days left. We might call Thursday and Friday too, trying to get a 91-degree day or so that would become the peak hour for the month. Right now, today is the only day that we could bill people on, and it was really, it probably missed the peak by $30,000. So we don't want to. We hope that we do better than that. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, especially because I guess I'd mainly be talking to, well, maybe Tag and Libby. But every month in your board package, you get a financial analysis, several slides here. And the reason it's in your package instead of in the meeting is that years ago, Jeff will recall, I used to start the meeting off by going through all these financial statements. And Jeff made the excellent observation once that, everything about this is stuff that's already happened. There's nothing we can do about it. And we're spending a lot of time on this. Why don't you just send that out for us to read and get it out of the meeting? And I thought that was a good idea, and we've done that ever since, and that's been several years ago. But since there's newer people on the board, I just want to make sure that you do realize we're not ignoring our financial statements, our financial status. It's just that we're not spending a lot of time in the meeting trying to get you guys to look at these columns and columns of numbers that are boring to look at. So this stuff is all in there, and probably the most powerful part of it is these revenue and expense statements. This is the electric one. Then we have the cable one, and it's always ugly to look at because it's great big red numbers. And then there's the land version of it. And hopefully, it's always black numbers that are larger than the red numbers on the cable statement, so we can justify our extremely low cable rates because the internet rates are paying for them. And then the last line on these is the net bottom line, showing that at the end of April, we were $1.7 million ahead in the black for net income, compared with 1.4 the year before. So we're doing a little better than we did in 18. Then there's a raft of useful metrics in there. I always, if you read the narrative that I write to go with this, so we're not asking you to just look at these numbers and graphics and understand them. I write a narrative to explain what they say. Well, I mean, what you really notice on this, we're always presenting the last 3 years worth of energy sold. And you'll notice there's something really predictable is every month it's generally lower sales than the previous 2 years. And that's just the situation that we're in. Sales are declining. We do these projections versus actual for each one of our business units. That's somewhat helpful, I think, to look at. Melanie's always making a guess at what we're going to do the next month, and then we report on how good our guess was or how bad it was. So we do that for each business unit. This one is useful. It shows you that in the broadband businesses, the LAN-only product is the one that is growing like topsy, and then the highest speed internet product is constantly growing. Everything else is pretty constantly shrinking. We've talked about that a lot, that one day the cable TV business as we know it will be over, and we'll only offer video streaming. I always like to show this one because people say that our cable rates are too high, but this one shows that our cable rates don't even cover the programming cost. Not counting the hundreds of miles of plant, expensive plant that's out there to deliver the product. We charge less than just what the programmers charge us on everything except the top tier, the HD tier. We actually make some money on it. The rest of them, we lose money on every one of them. Then projections versus actual on cable and LAN. I always like to show our cash balance. Right now it looks ridiculous because we just closed a bond issue and we've got all those funds in there that will be depleted slowly over the next 2 years until we do another bond issue. But that's always good to look at. You'll see at least twice a year where the beginning balance and the ending balance is a lot lower. That happens twice a year when we make our debt service payments. So that depletes it pretty rapidly. And then the write-offs that we've just been talking about. Of course, what you just did was looking back 6 months, but in April, we had a bad month. We had $13,500 worth of write-offs in April, and our target is this line right here. We'd like to keep it below 10,000. We didn't do that in April. So we can talk about that as long as you like, but I just want to make sure that you're getting that, and you're getting a narrative that explains it, and that's why it's not normally on the board agenda. You can decide to put it on there. It's just that the last instructions I got several years ago was to not have it on there.
Well, we were having 20 minutes of financial data, and we had so many other things to talk about, and time you got through that,
Everybody was ready to go.
Yeah. So, but if we need to, I mean, that's certainly.
Yeah, that's up to you
That's
guys.
the decision of several years ago.
Okay, of course, this is a rehash. The next item, if you're ready, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is the deal on the Glasgow Daily Times complaint. At the last meeting, you guys decided that you were willing to take the training that was requested by the Daily Times, and Amy has gone and talked to her contact at Kentucky League of Cities, who has a program, a 2-hour program, to accomplish both a rundown on open records and open meetings. And all we need now is for you all to pick a date and a time, sometime during the week of July the 15th, to do that. And you can either do it tonight or just email us whenever you're ready, or however you want to do it. But the week of the 15th was what they suggested.
Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Anytime that week.
I'll be gone that Friday.
In morning or night or whatever. You're not available the whole week?
No, I'll be gone that Friday.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's why I said good, Monday through Thursday.
Has there been any contact with the city council to perhaps participate in that as well?
Not from us. It's probably not an overture I'd like to make to them.
Well, I mean, she's going to be here anyway.
Well, yeah.
Anybody wanting to attend, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I could do that, just in a passive fashion. Hey, we're going to have
Yeah.
a session if you want to send anybody down.
Yeah. I mean, it's always good.
Right.
Education is never a bad thing.
Well, let us know. Look
I'm
at your
good.
calendars.
I'm good any day that week, as long as we do it kind of later in the day.
Y'all want to do it during the day and have lunch with it or something, or you want to do it at night? Just let us know. I think she kind of wanted it during the day, didn't she?
Yeah, she said she could do it after hours within reason, so.
Yeah.
I don't want to have
She's
lunch.
coming from outside.
Well, let's have lunch, Jeff.
Let's just bring a
can be
lunch
my
in, do it from 11 to 1. Y'all want to do 11 to 1, bring a lunch in, do it 11 to 1. Does that work for you, Jeff?
On what day?
Whatever day. I'm just trying to kind of figure out.
Yeah.
It's 4 hours.
That Thursday?
Oh, it's 2 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 hours.
Yeah.
That Thursday?
2-hour session.
11 to 1?
Is that the 18th?
Thursday's the 18th, yeah.
I already know I'm out that day.
Okay.
I would,
Monday or Tuesday then?
I agree.
I can't do Wednesday.
Well, we have to discuss this. The ironic thing is, we have to discuss this now,
Yeah.
because if we discuss it outside of the meeting, we're broken.
Right.
We've got a quorum.
I don't know. I think discussing a date would not be.
I've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, anytime 11 to 1 is fine, if y'all want to do it at that
I
time.
can't do Wednesday. It's the only day I can't do.
y'all want to try Monday?
Yeah,
Monday's
sure.
fine, 15th.
That works.
Are you going to do that in the council chamber or where?
I thought we'd do it right here in this room.
Let me suggest that you contact Brian Pack and ask him to communicate to the bar that this program is going to be offered, and some of them might want to come.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they could get it approved for CLE, and I was gonna ask, do y'all want me to be there?
Well, yes. You stuck with us now.
I know, but I mean, I don't mind it.
And no, I'm not
Figure out how
making, and
many,
no, I'm
so
not
we can
making
figure out what
meatloaf.
lunch to bring in.
So did y'all land on the 15th?
Yeah,
11
sounds
o'clock?
good.
Monday the 15th,
Maybe
11
see,
to 1.
I will check with her tomorrow and make sure she's still available for that date, and then I will email you all and let you know.
Okay,
Thank you, Amy.
Okay.
Did you say 11? 11, okay.
11 to 1.
Followed by lunch,
Huh?
with lunch in the middle.
Only thing is, if you do, if members of the bar did want to come, I'm not sure where you would have it take place, because you'd have to have if very many are interested in that. You know, for the,
Yeah.
Well, how about
Season
if Amy
availability.
sees if she's still available for that day, and then
We'll go from
send out invitations and go from there.
We'll find a place. Okay, next is just an update on the Windstream bankruptcy matter. We've still got Scott Becker working on that for us. We had a little flurry of activity. Now, I guess I called a couple of weeks ago. I was signing checks and noticed that we were paying Windstream $10,000 or $12,000 for the stuff we buy from them, which is our phone service here at the building and one of our internet circuits. And I just asked Scott, I said, do we have to pay them when they're not paying us? And he thought about it a little while and said, no, don't pay them. But then Melanie and I and Josh and the team got to talking about it, and we decided we weren't brave enough not to pay them. Because if they, the person that's getting the checks is somebody completely different from the people that are administering the bankruptcy. If they just went through a mechanical process like we do and said, oh, this account's not been paid, terminate it, and we didn't have phone service to the building and half of our internet product went down, it would be worth a lot more to us than the $12,000. So what we did was we paid them, but I wrote them a nasty letter that said, hey, we're tired of paying you and you're not paying us. Put us in contact with somebody that we can negotiate this deal with. And so far we've heard absolutely nothing from because I guess the clerk that got the check tore the check off and threw the letter away, I'm guessing. But
Is that something that Scott will continue to pursue?
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Scott volunteered to hire us an attorney and make an appearance in New York Bankruptcy Court, but we decided that would cost more than what Windstream owes us to begin with. So.
Yeah.
You got to be careful that you're not making any collection efforts, while they're in bankruptcy. Because
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
it could be a violation.
yeah.
And that would really kind of be considered just effectively a collection effort. If we're
Yes,
trying
that's what I'm
to
concerned
try to
about.
force an offset, yeah.
Yeah, we just said we want to be put in contact with somebody that we can discuss the matter, because Scott says they need to accept the contract with us. They need to acknowledge that they owe us, and that would become a filing in the bankruptcy.
Of course, we're an unsecured creditor anyway.
Right.
And I guess the protection is there to protect the secured creditors from, so they get their assets first.
Okay, then tag, the next item is a report on what happened on the discussion with TVA. And I just got this afternoon, and bring y'all quickly back up to speed. That matter was about a program called TVA's Green Power Producers Program that allowed developers to put in solar projects in Glasgow and sell the power to TVA. The Electric Plant Board's really not even in the deal, except that we wheel the power from the solar project back to TVA. And the complaint was that the TVA reimbursement to the developer was based on what our retail rates are. And when our retail rates went down due to the infotricity rate, their reimbursement went down, and they aren't happy about that. And so we reopened that discussion with TVA, because I've always felt that TVA should reimburse them not only for the energy, but also the contribution to peak demand. And as you can read, TVA wasn't really crazy about opening this thing again, because they realized they've got a fault in their program that we are exposing, and they are willing, I believe, to fix our fault by just paying them the higher of the variable rate or the fixed rate. But their problem, as you can see, is that they are worried about what other distributors are going to do, and that these are 20-year contracts, and that TVA believes that most of the distributors within that 20 years will put in a rate like we put in, and they need it to work for everybody. So I thought they were going to make us an offer today, but this email that came in this afternoon says we're going to have a firm answer to your request in the next 30 days. So at the next meeting, we should.
Well, really, we're asking them to do nothing more than what they're doing for other power generators, right? I mean, it's a market.
No, I mean, what they're doing for others is working better, because they're getting reimbursement on your standard 11-cent kilowatt hour. We're the only ones that have 7-cent kilowatt hours. And so...
No, I'm talking about power generators, like the big power generators. Their power generators, whether or not they're buying it from third party or generating themselves.
If they buy it from a third party, that's a price that varies every day.
It's market, right, spot rate, yeah. Or you get a 20-year PPA.
Well, yeah.
When these contracts went in place, the retail rate included, in effect,
Demand.
a demand charge. And since we've separated them, the retail rate no longer includes that. It was in spirit, that's the way it was supposed to be, but,
Right.
so they just need to honor what was
Really, they do.
intended.
Yeah,
And so it's that simple, we all know in 30 days.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, and I have one large outage report. This weekend, I thought I'd have a whole lot of them, but actually, we got through the whole weekend battery of about 7 different storm fronts without having a significant outage. But on June the 6th, we had one that is related to the report I gave you last month. Remember the picture with the blown up underground cable? Well, you know, I was talking about how we use the redundancy that we have in our system to take that substation out of service and feed those customers from other substations. Unfortunately, on the night before we were going to switch the system back normal and put Industrial Drive back in service, we had a storm that hit one of these mountainous, remote areas that is shocking to most people that even exist within the city limits of Glasgow, but they do. And it just so happened that a tree fell on this line that was fed by a circuit that, due to the other outage, was also feeding 2 other circuits. I mean, most of our circuits have about 500 customers on them, but since 3 of them were tied together, 1,500 people saw an outage on June the 6th due to a tree. It lasted only 37 minutes, but that's my report on that outage. Everything's switched back to normal now, and of course, as you can see, a mountainous area like that with as much rain as we've got 0 chance to get in there and do any aggressive trimming, so we've got it switched so that section of line is just dead now. We're not using it.
Is that the same area where
That's where Jeremiah
was hurt, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Where that log
exactly.
flipped up into the bucket?
Yeah, exactly the same.
That's what I
area.
thought.
Yeah. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my report for the evening.
I've got one other item that was not on the agenda, and I'd like to discuss it. It's just kind of popped up since I've been sitting here and been thinking about it. But I guess we need to suspend the rules to be able to talk about that. So I'd like to discuss what is going on with, and if any action that we may want to look at taking, what's going on with our former chairman and current member of this board, considering the letter that was sent out in the middle of the week stating that he was going to be absent for several months during his tenure. So if we'd like to have that discussion, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules, talk about that a little bit. I'm not asking for any type of action item tonight or action tonight, but I want to at least have a discussion and see what we think may be our options and when, if anything, maybe do.
I'll make a motion, we suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, so all those in favor of suspending the rules, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. So, it's my opinion that citizens of this community, place us on this board to represent them and their voice. And it's been, over the last few months anyway, several months, I guess, it's been fairly contentious. There's been a lot of emotion involved when it comes to the superintendent and operations of the utility. I think if we're going to have some of these hot topic items coming up, I think the more representation we have, the better. Not the less representation we have, the better. So I think we need to decide whether or not we want to continue on and wait for Mr. Frogs to come back and assume his position as a member of this board, at some time in the future, and just continue to operate with a less than full board, or whether or not we want to, request the city council take some action to address the vacant position on this board that has been described by the former chairman is going to be lasting for several months during this period of time.
Well,
So-
the mayor has to make the nomination, though. It's not a request, that's right, the mayor would have to make the nomination.
Well, wait,
And it's
Well,
my
first of all,
understanding
you
that the
have to-
mayor has,
There'd have to be a determination there is a vacancy. And I don't know for sure, and maybe Mr. Hampton could research that as to whether a resignation has to be accepted in order to be effective. As I understand it, a resignation letter was given to the mayor.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the letter, but that's my understanding. Then the mayor, according to the letter we got from the mayor, the mayor said
We haven't gotten a letter from the mayor.
well,
I saw some letter from the
yeah,
mayor.
there was a
Put a
letter to
statement out
the,
as
maybe
a
to the
mayor.
council.
A letter
It's all in the paper.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe it was to the rest of the council, I don't know.
Right.
yeah.
And he said he asked him to stay on. And he presumably agreed to do that. But now, whether that resignation was effective the moment it was given to the mayor, and the mayor being the appointing authority, subject to the council, would be the person who could do that. So, I've gone on, said a lot about it. You got to determine whether there's a vacancy or not.
Right. And
Second,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Second, he said that he wasn't going to be attending for several months. Well, all we know right now is there's 1 month that Mr. Froese didn't attend. That's tonight.
And there's been several before, which has been pointed out. Yeah.
Could be.
In fact, this time
But I'm
last year.
telling- yeah. But I think that an announcement followed by an action or inaction in the form of lack of attendance would be a basis for removal.
Neglect of duty.
Right. And whether you want to request the mayor or the council to do that, of course, is another matter. But my suggestion is you wait and see whether, in fact, he does not attend. That's my thought on that.
Or we request the mayor to accept the resignation and replace, if that's what we decide we want to do. Yeah, one or the other,
Yeah.
I guess.
Request the mayor to go ahead and retract his rejection. I don't know how you would want to put it, but go ahead and say, okay, I'll
Yeah,
accept it.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's the council, it's the mayor and the council's
Yeah,
action to
Right.
take, if they take it, because this vote of no confidence didn't mean anything.
doesn't mean a thing.
Didn't mean
No, it's just, somebody tells you they're going to do something and they turn around and don't do it, that gives me even less confidence.
Well,
So,
and it's a simple fact too. If you accept a board appointment, then you should be accepting that in good faith and conscience with a responsible effort behind you.
Sure. Now, anybody can
Miss a meeting because life happens.
That isn't what that really
Life
implies.
happens. But me personally, if I'm not going to be here half the year, I have no business accepting an appointment that I'm expected to be here monthly.
Right.
It's about taking it seriously to come to the table and work.
Well, the
That's right.
purpose of having this board is to have input from the community
Right.
about what's going on and what the people want. And if you're not here, you're neglecting, number one, neglecting your duty, but going adverse to the purpose of your appointment, as you said in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, and then I think Mr. Basil, in the city council meeting, kind of laid out the process, for the removal of the superintendent, which is going to be the same for a potential removal of a board member. We've got to establish cause, and then there's due process, and we've got to the council has got to forward him that due process hearing. So, but I think it's up to us to determine whether or not there's been cause, and then we request the council to.
I'm not sure you guys determine that. I think it's the city council to
Yeah.
determine that, not you guys.
It's just,
Determine cause.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't get rid of him no matter what. So no
Right,
matter
we
what.
can't.
That's not our place.
But,
Well, we're the only ones that know whether or not there's been neglect of duty or
well, I think
malfeasance.
what you want to
misfeasance.
do is to officially bring it to the attention
Yeah.
of the mayor that there's
to the
an
mayor
issue.
that there's an issue and that we're requesting another appointment.
Yeah. Okay.
I just need to remind you that we are under an agreement that says we have to do an annual rate review, and that normally is going to be an August, September kind of matter, and it's a contentious matter. And so for you three to be left as the sole representatives of the community with a hot potato like that to deal with.
We got Marlon, too.
Well, I mean, that just needs to be part of your all's deliberation.
Yeah.
Is that this was a normal meeting tonight, and I hope we can continue to have normal meetings, but there will be contentious matters, and always rates are contentious. But we're duty bound because we agreed to perform an annual rate review.
Right.
And that's got to happen. It'll be August, September-ish.
Okay. That's all.
Hope y'all have fun doing it.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I
I'll be
appreciate
watching
it.
from afar.
You'll be in Mexico. Well, with that, I move we adjourn. I can't make, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'd be happy to make a motion that we adjourn
All
this
right.
evening.
Second. We are adjourned.
All right.
Jeff?
Sayonara.
Thank you, sir.
Jeff, it's been a pleasure.
Happy trails.
Good luck. Glad you
Jeff, the only reason I was, see, because I couldn't get back from Nashville soon enough. Thank you for all your service, for everywhere you've been. What's up, Mr. Tide?
Did you know, I was adopted.
You blow anything up?
Yeah, I want you know, come by my
Jeff's
house and
handled my
tell me
adoption.
why
Really?
I'm strong.
And he did it for nothing.
We can do it.
I remember
Give me
my
a call.
parents telling me that when I was little. He's like, Jeff Herbert, he's been got just a dime.
Has Johnny ever gotten over it?
I've been paying for it ever since.
My parents have always told me.
Ours is like my mama. She said sometimes she wants to send me back for a
And
refund.
mom and dad have always made sure I know,
Doing what you
Jeff
do and
never charges
having
one
life the way you do. I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. I'm coming to give you a hug. Don't run off on me.
I think I've told you that.
Is that right? Good to see you, bud. Yes, sir, I'll wait.
Hey.
Oh, shit, you're tired.
Well, gentlemen,
This is what most, that's what they used to be. Our TV ratings can go down.
Yeah. We got the draw now. Yeah.
give me a word for the microphone.